Remember the hereafter, and you will remember why you are here. Remember the hereafter, and you will remember why you are here and what you are after.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah.
Salatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah.
Wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah.
Wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah.
As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabiyallah.
Salatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabiyallah.
Wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nurallah.
Wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nurallah.
Sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Dear viewers of Madani Channel, welcome back to YOLO. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, we've got another very knowledgeable program for you today. Alhamdulillah, on this beautiful journey of the soul, we had reached the day of judgment, and last week we dealt with people rising from their graves and how and what state they would be coming out. Today we're going to continue this magnificent story from there. But before we do, just imagine this: the day of judgment is a very difficult day. And people will be rising from their graves depending on the good deeds they did or the bad deeds they did in this world. So those who did good will rise very beautifully with great honor and grace, and they will walk towards the plains of resurrection. And those who immerse themselves in sin will be lost and will be confused as to what is happening. But then there will be some who will have special privileges, will be purely blessed. And those people are identified in this hadith mubarakah that I'm going to read to you now. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wasallam has stated that the closest to me on the day of judgment will be the one who has recited Durud Pak upon me in abundance. Subhanallah. Now just imagine that day, a terrifying day, a very difficult day. The plains are made out of copper, the sun is a mile and a bit away. It's a very difficult day with people drowning in their own sweat. And can you imagine the euphoria, the peace, the tranquility, the happiness on the faces of the people who will be with Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? For them, this day is a magnificent day. For them, this is a brilliant day. For them, it's the highlight of their life and existence. They are next to the best of creation sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now we can be amongst those people. Just make it a habit. It's a very simple thing to do. Recite Durud Pak at least 111 times, but the scholars write that try and recite it 313 times. Why? Because you know, like in this hadith mubarakah, it says, whoever has recited Durud Pak upon me in abundance, the scholars write that abundance, if you recite 313 times, you fall into that category. And brothers and sisters, what a beautiful category that is to fall into. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Remember the hereafter, and you will remember why you are here and what you are after.
The horns are blown, and we all start to rise up from our graves. And the way that we lived our life will be our condition on that day. And everybody will be marching towards the plains of resurrection. And we were going to continue from there. So, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, we're blessed today that we've got Shiraz Bhai in the studio. Shiraz Bhai, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Where we left it last week, you'll remember, is that we discussed in detail how people would rise from their graves. And you told us that, people would rise the way that they'd left this world. So those who had left this world, in their sins, they would wake up in that way. And then we talked about, you remember, those beautiful personalities who left, reciting the Quran, for example. And we had the beautiful example of Hazrat Usman radiallahu ta'ala, who will rise from his grave, and the Quran will pay testimony to his shahadat as well. And so people have come out of their graves. And the Quran says, a lot of people will come out and they won't know what's going on, they will be confused. I think there was that famous hadith mubarakah where Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu asked about the intellect being intact and your senses. And Aka Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, yes, your senses will be intact. So I assume that when we get up from our graves, you will know what's going on. It's not, when it's described as confusion, confused at those who thought this world was everything, because they think, what is this? Well, for those who'd learned what the beloved Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had told us and believed in it, because believing in the Day of Judgment is fundamental to our iman.
So Arun Bhai, like you said, intellect being intact. It was after a certain war of Islam where the Prophet ﷺ, the enemies of Allah who had died, the Prophet ﷺ went up to them whilst they were dead, and Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab was beside him, and he asked, have you realized the truth about your Lord now? Have you seen, have you observed the truth, the haqq? And obviously they can't reply, but Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is their aql still intact? I mean, do they understand what you are saying? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied that, Ya Umar, that they understand everything, the thing is they can't reply now, they can't implement anything. So going into the grave, so you have like two types of people. One, Hazrat Usmani Ghani radiyallahu an, he was stood beside the grave, and such that he was crying so much that his beard became wet, completely soaked, and then the drops of the tears were landing on the floor. So someone asked him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, that why are you crying so much? The Prophet ﷺ has guaranteed you Jannat, so he was one of the 10 who is guaranteed Jannat. And he says that, whoever that person was, that this is the grave. This is the first step into the hereafter. Whoever succeeds in the grave, his hereafter will be successful. And whoever fails in this tribulation, in this test, his, every step after that will be, failure as well. He will just be punishment increasing up until he reaches the final punishment. So it tells us that, a Muslim, he lives a very difficult life in the dunya. He has to get up for Fajr in the cold, perform wuzu, read his Salatul Fajr with Jama'at, and then, these then go on to his worldly, his livelihood. These things become very difficult. Is a task, is a burden, a duty that he has upon himself. Now, Allah Azza wa Jalla puts even more burdens upon him, puts pain upon him. Allah Azza wa Jalla tests him, he makes them lose their family, his wealth, his, the fruits of life. Allah mentions in the Quran. Why is this? Why does Allah Azza wa Jalla, make it difficult for the Muslim? Especially in the here, this final period of time just before Imam Mahdi. Muslims will face, even at the time of Imam Mahdi, a very difficult time. Why is this? One of the main reasons is Allah Azza wa Jalla wants to put as much difficulties as we can handle in the dunya, so when we leave this dunya into the grave, our sins have been, they have been cancelled out due to the duties and the obstacles we faced in the dunya. So now in our grave, we are clean from sins because we battled through all them obstacles of the dunya. Now in the grave we are free from sins, and now is everlasting rest. On Judgment Day is everlasting rest. In the hereafter in Jannat is everlasting peace. So this stage by stage, each stage is better than the last.
The question that we started with was, rising from the graves. And we said, different people will rise in different ways, and then they will be going towards the plains of resurrection. Now, when we get up, then we will be aware of what's going on. So we'll know that, because nowhere along this journey, and this is the concept that I wanted to try and get across to the viewers of Madani Channel as well, nowhere along this journey from when you're born, because we can't remember the period before we were born, can we? For the ordinary person, our real intellect starts not even when we're a child, but perhaps when we're 5, 6, 7, 8, that sort of age you can remember on from. But when you get to your grave, you will remember your world, and you will remember everything that happened. And then when you wake up on the Day of Judgment, you will remember, you'll be aware of your grave, you will be aware of the dunya when you get up. So whatever, the way you've lived your life, and the hadith Mubarak we quoted last week, in effect, it comes to that, doesn't it? What a beautiful hadith Mubarak Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the way you die is the way that you will be raised up. So those special people will be raised up. But the point I was trying to get across was, all the way through this part of the journey, we will be aware of everything that's going on. It's not like we die, there's a blank, and then we're raised on the Day of Judgment. It's like we pass away from this world, we know the angels will come, we'll go into the grave, we'll have the garden of bliss or the fire of hell, then we will wake up on the Day of Judgment, and the waking up and the rising from the graves we will be aware of, we will see everything, we will know everything, we will know where we are, and we'll know what we're doing.
Yes, so it's a very good point you brought up. I think, the general person does think once you die, that's it. Your intellect changes, everything changes, and it's a period of time that we just deal with when it comes. But that's not the case. It's like you're going into a new place and your intellect is intact. Your intellect is intact.
So it's just like we're sat here now, I see you, I can sense everything.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. On the Day of Judgment, those people, they'll be running around. And the Muslims, because they had Iman, their Iman will be like in the form of a nur. Above them on their right side, and we hovering above them, this light. The more good deeds you have, the more strong the strength of your iman, the brighter and larger this nur is above and on the right side of you, hovering around. This is mentioned in the Quran. And now a disbeliever, he will come and try to snatch it, snatch that, because he's in darkness. He will try to snatch this light from you. And he will say, come closer so I could, so I could, come closer, stay close so I can, see where I'm going as well. And that person will reply that go back to the dunya where you came from. There you had ghurur, you had takabbur, that your life, was you was overwhelmed by your life back there. And I warned you there, you didn't listen. And these are the same people that spent time together, but one listened, one didn't listen. A warner came to them to tell them as well. One listened, in the hereafter he has nur-e-iman around him, and the other person's covered in darkness. Then Allah Subhanahu is, He will cause some sort of separation between them, and then forever they will be separated on the plains of resurrection. So this is one type of, understanding how our intellect will be intact, such that you will say to him that, remember I told you in the dunya, to do this, you didn't listen.
So you remember, obviously, yeah, good point. Yeah.
So, and then even, when Hisab Kitab happens, there's loads of examples. We have to look at them in detail. Even when Hisab Kitab happens, one is the very long Hisab, where every single thing is read out. Every single moment of your life, when you looked from left to right, when you looked up and down, anything you done will be asked, why did you do this? Why did you do this? Why did you do this? And you won't have the words to say, I didn't do this, because you've done everything, and you won't be able to say, I can't remember doing this. Everything will come there. Harun Bhai, even those people in the dunya, they didn't have intellect. In the hereafter, they will be given intellect. So your intellect actually increases in the hereafter.
Allah.
So there are many examples of your intellect being stronger in the hereafter than what we assume in our head. Just generally, we just think, okay.
I mean, one question I always had was, a lot of people, they fail to understand in this world. But on the Day of Judgment, I assume that Allah Azza wa Jal will give everybody what you said, that increased intellect. So they won't think what's happening now. They will know what's happening now. They will know that what we were invited towards was the truth. They will know that the most important thing was Salah. They will know that the Quran was an amazing book. They will know that this Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was the best of creation. They will know that then, and they will regret it. It's not a case of they're confused. They will now know it. That confusion stems from the fact that they didn't follow it. And now they're confused. What do I do now? That's the confusion. Now, that's a good kind of base.
There is a share though, "Phir na manoge qiyamat pe, agar maan gaya."
Allah.
So even some people.
Aaj le unki pana, aaj madad maang unse, phir na manenge qiyamat mein agar maan gaya. What that basically means is today's the time to accept it. Because on the Day of Judgment, when you see it, then everybody will accept it. But when it's too late, and this is what the scholars write as well in relation to death, when it comes to a certain stage when you're actually dying, The doors of repentance are closed for you, and you cannot now go back and say, because I think it was Fir'aun, wasn't it? He said, you know, the Shair writes, Musa mein Rabb mania tera. Like, it was too late for him, because he knew death was about to overtake him. And so now is the time. What Allah Hazrat beautifully writes, I think it's Allah Hazrat's couplet, and what Allah Hazrat beautifully writes is, today is the time to take hold of, you know, the servitude of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If you accept it tomorrow saying, yeah, I accept this, no, it's too late now. Upon seeing everything, seeing the evidence, seeing the proof, you will not be able to, you know, do justice to it. Now, the reason we've set that base is this, because what we've established without a shadow of a doubt is that your intellect is intact in the grave. On the day you rise, you will know exactly what's going on. Today, what we wanted to cover was the bad person rising from the grave. And this is going to continue for the rest of today's section in this episode, and inshallah in our next episode as well. Because this is important for us to realize who we are and where we are. So I want you to give us an idea. We heard last week that the person who rises will rise in the condition that they went to their grave, and so the pious people will rise in a good way. So tell us, how will the bad person rise from the grave?
So there's many different narrations. For example, the one who drank alcohol and he died in that state, or his full life was like that. He will be resurrected with his tongue hanging out like a dog's tongue hangs out.
Allah,
foam dripping from his mouth, you know, the saliva dripping. For him, that will be his embarrassment, his, you know, that you know, just being in that situation on the Day of Judgment where you're in this certain condition where your tongue's hanging out, whereas on the other side you have these people that are sitting on, you know, thrones, sitting in the shade of Allah's arsh, and you're in this crazy halat where you're drowning in your sweat, and you know, your tongue's dripping, you're thirsty, it's hot, it's heated. I mean, for those people that have ever, you know, go to the sauna rooms, it's around 80 degrees in a sauna room, Mumbai, and I think, give or take, you probably maximum stay in there without having a cold shower for about half an hour. And it's only 80 degrees. Now, you know, sitting in there and just contemplating that, imagine, look how hot it is in here. Imagine on the Day of Judgment, where, you know, in the sauna room you have water, you have facility for water, and you have facility to have a cold shower. But on the Day of Judgment, there's none of that. It's just immense heat coming right at you. The ground is, you know, burning your feet, and there's no water except for the people, you know, that are blessed by the Prophet on his house Kausar. There's no, you know, there's no shade for you, and you're in that certain state for only Allah knows how long. That's why for some people it will feel as if 50,000 years. Because of the immense pain that he will suffer. Now that's for the person who consumes interest. Different narrations have been mentioned. A person who, you know, looks at bad things, uses his eyes for bad things, he will, you know, have certain punishment. A person who listens to music, he'll have a certain punishment.
There was a hadith in Mubarakah that we covered a few weeks or months ago where Aka Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said the rationale was that those arrogant ones will be raised in the form of ants. Is that one of the ways?
Yeah, so the outcome is you will be humiliated on the Day of Judgment for the actions you've done in the dunya, believing that I'm not going to be questioned. So, you know, like the Fir'aun, Namrud, these horrible people that, you know, killed many
tyrants,
you know, innocent people. They killed, you know, large massacre. These people, they'll be resurrected in a condition that only Allah knows how severe it would be. So every person, that sin that he was, you know, mesmerized by in the dunya, that sin will come and take him over on the Day of Judgment.
Allah,
and it will be revealed what your dunya life was in front of everyone. Everyone will know what you had been up to. For those people, for example, now...
So their intellect is intact. So when a person comes out of the grave, the condition he comes out in, so straight away the other people will realize that this is the sin he used to commit.
Yeah, the sins will be revealed, the way they would live their life, how, they woke up, how they sat down, how they acted with people. This will all come in front of everyone. And what will happen, Harun, some people, their sweat will be up to their ankles, some their knees, some they'll be drowning in it up to their nose, mouth, some will be completely inside. And then there's no death up until, there's no death after that.
Allah,
death's gone. So
all these people who denied, they denied the rights of Allah Azza wa Jal and His Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They denied, some people denied the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal, na'uzubillah min zalik, and I was reading something, and in the old Arab states, in the olden times, what it said is that somebody said that there are people that deny the existence of God. The Arabs used to say, well, they must belong in a mental asylum, because how can you deny the existence of God from when you see the world around you? So they used to say that the people who deny, they say there is no God, actually are mentally ill and they need to be treated. And this is what the Arabs used to say.
And you know what, it's just one of those things. Each individual on the Day of Judgment, he'll have his own dilemma. He'll have his own, state of, the way he is on that day. Each individual will have his own state. So one person, he will be loving it. He's in the shade of Allah's throne. He knows, basically what we call we're boxed off, because we lived our life practicing. We done what we were told to do. We done the halal as halal, and we kept the haram as haram. We differentiated from good and bad. We practice the Sunnah. We practice the Quran. We're relaxed. Then you have that group of people, Harumba, that spend their full life like, whatever comes tomorrow, live for the day. And these people, it will hit them hard on the Day of Judgment. That time we had, we wasted. This phase will happen where one person, father's running away from son, son's running away from father, brother's running away from brother, husband's running away from sister. It's just going, everyone's going everywhere. Each person's gonna have his own phase. He's running around, and it's like complete. It's a real pandemic. Now remember, the enemies of Allah, the disbelievers, they will be separated. The believers will eventually gather together, and they will, they will have this conversation that what should we do? We need this to, come to a solution. And the famous hadith, which probably every Muslim should know, that they will all end up going to Adam alayhi salam, and they will ask Adam alayhi salam that, Adam, can you please intercede for us, that this punishment ends, this our hisab starts, so that we can go on to our final abode. Adam alayhi salam, he will say that today, I'm not for this. This is not something that I can do. Go to someone else. So he will direct him towards the next person, either prophet to prophet to prophet. From Nuh alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam. Every single prophet, from how many there were, they will go to each and every one's doorstep. This is in the first 25,000 years, Rumbai. And right in the end, Isa alayhi salam will say, go towards Muhammad. When they go towards Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he will say, Ana lahada, I am made for this. You've come to the right place. So after all this, going from one prophet to another, and this is the entire civilization. You can imagine how big the plains of resurrection are. From one prophet to the next, to the next, to the next. And Prophet ﷺ will say that this is the reason why I was, Ana laha, I am meant for this.
Allahu Akbar.
Them words are deep, Ana laha, that I am meant for this. So you went all around to each and every prophet, and you've ended up, in the end you've ended up and you've accepted who I am.
We've got a full program just on that, but I just wanted to come back to the topic. So when we rise from our graves, depending on our actions in this world, we will rise in that condition. So the pious, good people will rise in a good way. The bad people will rise in the way that, according to the sins they did. And there are many narrations. Everybody will be barefooted. Everybody will not be dressed and be naked. And there's that famous hadith in Mubarakah where, the mother of the believers asked, Ya Rasulullah, won't we be embarrassed? And Nabi Kareem said, the terror of that day is so much, nobody will be bothered about that. And then, you will have then the people with all their different forms, and all the sins that they committed, and everybody will know that. And you're on a plane of resurrection that's made out of copper. You're barefooted. You've got the sun, 1.25 miles?
1.25,
miles away. It's beaming down on you, and people are drowning in their own sweat. And this is a physical world, isn't it? It's not an imaginary world. This is a physical world, like we are today. It is a physical world. And there, depending upon your deeds in this world, if you protected your salah, you'll be in bliss. If you protected your iman, you'll be in bliss. If you read the Quran, you will be in bliss. That Quran will be with you, I assume. It will be helping you. The Day of Judgment to start. And during this, you are being constantly punished, because obviously if you were sinful, that is a great punishment for you. And then if you were a believer, then that's a bliss for you. If you were with Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But we're dealing with the bad soul today, so just taking that through. So they will be, lost on the plains of resurrection. They will be in the state that they went into their graves, and they will. We've heard of all this punishment. Say, for example, the person who had punishment in their grave with pythons and everything else. That won't happen on the plains of resurrection. That'll happen in the grave, and then that will stop. The punishment of the grave will stop, and they'll come out in their different states. Is that right? Yeah. And then, how will they find their direction to where they need to go?
So, good question. So the believers, they'll be free. The good person, when he exits the grave, they'll be free. And those people then go and find their imam, whoever their imam was, their teacher, their spiritual guide. So the good person will go to the imams. The bad person, there will be an angel who will tie him up, and he will drag him across these plains.
Allah.
Some will be dragged from the legs, some will be dragged from the necks. Some will be dragged from the heads and the necks. So this is how they'll be navigated. But the Muslim, the believer, he's free.
He's got his noors.
He will go towards his imam. His imam will go towards his imam.
Allah.
All the way up. And if you add all
so
the
we'll go to Amir al-Sunnah, they'll go to Hazrat Ziauddin Madani rahmatullah alayhi, they'll go to Ala Hazrat, and they'll just carry on from there. And we'll all end up at the feet of Sayyidi Ghusi Azam radiyallahu ta'ala, who will take us to the feet of Hazrat Mawla Ali radiyallahu ta'ala. And then, agar we are blessed, then to the feet of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Viewers of Madani Channel, it's a fascinating subject. What we've learned today is that our deeds in this world will dictate how we rise from the grave, what condition we rise in, what happens to us after that, how we travel over and transverse over the plains of resurrection. If we are bad, then the bad soul will rise in a very confused state. A bad soul will rise in the type of sins that he was doing. The punishment for those sins will be inflicted upon him. He will be tied and dragged by the angels across the plains of resurrection. And this day, this is the first part of this day, and it's 25,000 years long. He's being humiliated, he's being disgraced, he's going to feel the punishment, he's going to have all his intellect intact. And all of that is dictated by how we live our life in this world. Viewers of Madani Channel, we've got a fascinating subject. Inshallah, we're going to continue it next week. We're going to take the journey of the bad soul we've gone from the grave to the plains of resurrection. And inshallah, Shiraz Bey next week is going to tell us how the bad soul will be greeted at the scales, what will happen on the bridge of Sirat, and what will happen generally on the Day of Judgment, and how the bad soul will face its difficulties. We've got to move on. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Remember the hereafter. are after.
Now, we started a few weeks ago with the relationship between children and parents, and Shahazbay, we've dealt with when children are young, how parents look after them, and then middle age when youth, and they become very, boisterous and arrogant and everything else, and how they mistreat parents, and then how to deal with elderly parents, and how parents can get quite irritable and quite difficult at times. I've seen that with a lot of buzurg. You go to see people and their elderly buzurg are there, and sometimes they'll be sat there and they'll come out with comments and things, and you just laugh it off. This is the nature of elderly people, so we dealt with that. And then last week, you'll remember, we dealt with a very important topic of parents passing away in your hands and how to deal with that. MashaAllah, you gave us some beautiful Madani pearls. Today I wanted to take that to its real endful conclusion, and which is that once parents have passed away from this world, where we left it was the dafeen, where you're going to lay them into their grave, and there's a beautiful way of that, and Amir al-Sunnah Dawud Barakatuh Alayhi, I think Madani will has set that out. You do the talqeen for them, and then you pray for them. And what Amir al-Sunnah Dawud Barakatuh Alayhi writes, and this is something that we're losing today, is this, that try and stay by my graveside for at least 12 days, I think Amir al-Sunnah writes. And then if you can't do that, 7 days, if you can't do that, just a few days, it'll help me become accustomed to my grave. Carry on reading the Quran, reciting Naate Paaks, reading Durood Paak upon the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
That also tells you that your akal is still intact.
And again, that also tells you your akal is intact, subhanallah. And, and that was what, and then what's happened is thereafter, regularly, send them isal swab. Now, what the world we're living in is a fast-moving world, and in the name of modernism and in the name of lack of understanding, the first thing I've seen, I'm just going to deal with that. The main topic I wanted to cover today was isal swab, because there is a whole cohort.
What's isal swab?
It's basically giving reward for those who've passed away. Now, basically, there is a large group of youth these days who have perhaps misunderstood something somewhere along the line, and they don't really understand this concept, so they deny it. There's that. But before I go into that, I just wanted to deal with one thing. There is this trend these days that as soon as we go with the Dawat Islami Madani environment, we help people with funerals and everything as we go to the graveyard. And you've buried somebody's father, somebody's mother, and put them in the grave, and then you've done the dua, and then the children just start to walk off. And, it's almost like, there's people at home, gotta go, gotta do this, gotta do that. And nobody really stays. And then they might, one of them may come back the night after, and one of them may come back at the next Jummah and everything else. And they completely just almost abandon them. And that kind of confuses me, and it kind of disheartens me. First of all, what would you say about that?
It's that same thing. I think people is in their head that once you die, Allah ne wale, that you're in your own zone now. But they have to remember that their intellect is still intact. They are literally in that grave. They they can hear you. They could, when your steps, when you're walking out the graveyard, they could hear your footsteps going. When a person performs talqeen and you say the name the first time, he opens his eyes. Second time, he sits up. Third time, he says, "Speak, I'm listening." So, but we can't hear the animals and the angels. They can hear this. So we actually, this generation, probably even in the past, we have this thought that when the dead, it's a different thing now. It's like the essence of that person has changed now.
I'm going to say something really harsh, and it may sound unfair, but I'll explain it. Is it a lack of love, a true love? I'll tell you why. I've seen brothers, there's a friend of mine, his mother passed away, and they were buried in the local graveyard in this country, and he used to drive past when he goes to work. Now I know that in the morning when he went, he used to stop, do dua at his mother's grave and go to work, and on the way back, because he was passing, he used to stop, and he's been doing this for years. It's just that love. I've known people who for days have sat at their mother's grave or their father's grave and just sat there. I've been to the Qabristan in my town, Bolton, and different times. Sometimes when you're passing there, you think, Fulan Buzurg Fotak, let's go do dua. And I've seen brothers where chair, little light, and they've got Surah Yasin Sharif in the middle of the night, yeah, and they're praying, yeah, and they're crying. Nobody in the graveyard. Yeah, they're crying. And you can see these people really love, I've helped bury people where, everybody's walked off, and the son, or the sons have said, we ain't going anywhere. Please, the brothers will sort it out. I'm not leaving.
One funeral after he buried his father, he actually said, right, if you guys want to go, I'm going to stay here. He said in a way that, you guys please go, I'm going to stay here with my father.
Yeah.
I want quiet time.
And so this is why, it may sound harsh, but I'm saying that there are these people, I've seen it with my own eyes, but on the other front there are people who are just glad to get rid of them, and I just want to go away. And is it really a lack of love we had? That sincerity in your heart. These are the people who gave their lives for you. These are the people, and they're going to be scared.
Ruba is saying that, explain this then. Once they are alive, like for example, when the father's going Pakistan, like one person's going, but 2 cars go to drop him off. They stay in the airport until he's gone, and then they're going past the window, the waiver. That's their love, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then you saying that them leaving the graveyard and going home, there's no love there. I don't understand that. Why in the dunya, whilst they're alive, you show that love and affection, and then now he's passed away?
Because the intellect is that your father, your mother, your relative knows you are there. There is that famous hadith about when Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that the person in the grave hears the footsteps of the people who are walking away. Now, so when you're stood next to, you're reciting Surah Yasin Sharif, next to your mother or father's grave, when you've put them into the grave, they are in a new place, they're in a scary place, they're in a difficult place, they need all the help and assistance you can give them. You're sat over the grave, all the time, and you're trying to kind of let them get used to it and get them accustomed to it. That's what Amir al-Sunnah says. And that is that relationship, isn't it?
But even look, for example, Harun like a father, whilst being alive, he should have told his son that Putra, when I die, stay by my grave for 3 days. Innit?
He should have, but I'm going to go a bit further than that, because what we do is and this is harsh again, but this is one of the beauties of Dawat Islami. Dawat Islami highlights the real problems. I've seen sons, I've seen daughters, I've heard them, and it isn't that my Qibla Walid Sahib is there, body baby. And it goes through me. I think, how dare you? This is your dad. It's not a body. This is Qibla Walid Sahib, Abbaji, and you get a few of them, and when they do ghusl, they're crying and saying Abbaji, Abbaji. They never use the word body, but you get those sometimes. And I don't know, there's that old sher by Mian Sahib, and it may sound harsh, but it comes to mind every time I think about it. Jinnat tanna vich ishq nahi rachiya, kutte una thi change. Malik dekar rakhi karde sabar bhukhe nange, right? Even a dog, you don't feed it. You don't feed it. It stays outside your door, doesn't it? It still guards it, even if you're not fed it. And Mian Sahib says, look, and as children, you've been born, they've done everything for you. And as soon as the ruh goes, that's now a body, and I don't want to touch any of his stuff. I don't want his jumper. The example I gave you a few weeks ago, where the Maulana Sahib said, keep this jumper, Walid ki nishani. He said, I don't want to touch the jumper of a deceased. This deceased was the guy whose inheritance you want. But and so the lesson for us today really is that when they pass away, it isn't just a body. It's still Amiji. This is the mother who, fed you, who did everything for you, who changed your nappies, who did everything. Her life, you were the star of her eyes. You were everything to her. This is the father who worked day and night. Sometimes they can't walk, in their old age because they've done so many hours. They've got arthritis in their bones, yeah? We don't appreciate it, but that arthritis is so that they could provide you with every luxury that you have, yeah? And today we forget it. But, it's not a body. It is Abbaji and Amiji who are lying there, and that's what you need to appreciate. When you go to the grave, stay there. Don't give a damn. Dunya, IOG, Sharm, roti. If somebody goes back with their roti, it doesn't matter. There are brothers, there are sisters who will feed the people.
I think that's just an alibi.
It's an alibi. It's an excuse, isn't it? Sit there, stay there, and there are brothers, who are Kush Kismet as well. I call them very fortunate because they have been planning that, little tent with a little kind of platform, so I can sit by my parents' grave, and I can, little plastic sheets.
Yeah.
So it's like a little tent, and I can sit by my parents' grave. If it's raining, snowing, whatever, put a little heater on it, and I can keep reading. Yeah, these are khushkismat people, And I think I can't remember whether I mentioned last week when my Qibla Dadaji passed away, and Qibla Walid Sahib was there, and after burying him, my Qibla Walid Sahib camped out at the grave for like 2 months. And what other people did is when they came to see him, they had to go there. They had to go there. And he just stayed there. He had his Quran Sharif or his Madani Surah in his hand. And other people, when they came, they felt obliged. They just sat there and read and read and read. And even when he came back from Pakistan, he goes, the one thing I'm going to miss is that I used to sit around there all day, and anybody who came, they used to have to come there to me. And that's the way to do it. Kashke, we had that as well.
It's a good idea.
It's a good, and if you want to do taziyat, I'm here, here's where I am. Come here, yeah? What a brilliant way to do it.
Remember, just before we touch on Isal, one very, very important thing is when a person dies, I think we missed out. The inheritance, we forget about that. And what happens is, and just to put into perspective, some person passed away and there was a buzurg beside him whilst he passed away. And whilst he was, his final breaths were coming out, there was a candle lit beside him. And I think this is in Fazan Sunnah. And what happens is that the Buzurg, he turns the candle off, even though there was no more candles in the house now. He turns that candle off, and now there's no light. And a person says that, look, there's no light and there's no more other candles in the house, relight it, why have we turned it off? He says, no, now this is his property and it's gone into inheritance. He doesn't own it no more. I cannot use it anymore.
Allah.
We cannot benefit from it until it goes into the inheritance. So this is how sensitive it is. Each and every penny of his wealth needs to be divided correctly and given to the right people that who lawfully own that wealth now. And some people are neglected, some people are given extra. In inheritance, Warasat, a person must refer back to a mufti and a scholar to actually seek guidance of, look, father's passed away, this is how much wealth there is, this is how much daughters, sons, brothers, sisters, whatever it is. Where does this wealth go? And
again, if it's done in accordance with Shariat, they will get the sawab for that, and they will get the sukoon for that, because they'll know what's going on. I'm going to have to move on. We haven't got long left, but there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of confusion about Ihsal Sawab, giving a reward to the deceased, and for visiting the graves. It confuses me. I'm going to start with the Hadith Mubarakah from Shu'bul Iman, Hadith number 7911. Whenever any one of you donates nafil charity, he should do so on behalf of his parents, so that they would also gain its sawab without any reduction in the sawab of the donor. Right? And then in another hadith in Barakah, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that the one who visits the graves of either or both of his parents on Friday and recites Surah Yasin over there will be forgiven. Now, there's lots of hadith in Barakah in relation to visiting the graves. The one who performs Hajj on behalf of his father and mother, Hajj will be offered on their behalf, and he himself will gain the sawab of 10 Hajj. So there is this clear-cut example, and then there is a glorious ayah Mubarakah of the amazing Quran as well, which basically says the same sort of thing, that when it's from Surah Hashr, verse 10, and those who came after them submit, O our Rabb, forgive us and our brothers who preceded us in faith. So you're asking for forgiveness for those who have gone past. Yet some people, Shiraz Bey, say, oh, you shouldn't do Ihsal Sawab. What's all that about? Help me. I'm confused.
So, some people have the mindset that, once you're dead, that's it, the test has ended. And it's the end now. You can't make more deeds, you can't, not make any deeds. So good and bad deeds stop. That is an error. It's a straightforward error in their thinking, in their belief that your deeds stop as you die. Because from hadith, from various different places, we know 100% that when a person passes away, for example, there's one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that your deeds do stop, except 3. A child you have left behind who does dua for you.
Well, I've got one from Sunnah Abu Dawud Sharif, And he says that Hazrat Sayyidina Sa'ad asked, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, my mother has passed away. I want to give some sadaqah on her behalf. Which sadaqah would be best for her? And Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam replied, water. So Hazrat Sayyidina Sa'ad radiallahu ta'ala had a well dug and said, this is for Sa'ad's mother. So, you know, the thing that really confuses me is, it's not a grey area. It's black and white. You know, it's black and white.
And he called that the well of Sa'ad.
Yeah.
The well of Sa'ad. So he named that well after his mother. So he done a good deed and he named it after his mother, and with this intention that the sawab is going towards her. So it's for those people that think that this is wrong. Their belief that's an error in their belief. They need to change.
Well, it's something that's concocted. Where the shaitan has put a waswasa in there, and they've not checked the Quran, they've not checked the Hadith Mubarakah, they've not asked the learned scholars, they've not sat down with people like you and said, what is the real thing about this? Because if they'd sat down with people like you would have said, look, the Barani Sharif, I've got another Hadith Mubarakah in front of me. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, and this is also narrated by Hazrat Jalaluddin Suyuti rahmatullah alayhi as well, that my ummah will enter the graves with their sins, but it will come out of their graves without sins, as their sins are forgiven by virtue of the supplications of Muslims. So when you sit down and you say, Rabbi ighfir li wa li walidayya, and you read the dua for your parents or everybody else, Yawma yakumul hisab, all the Muslims upon to the day of judgment, Allah Azza wa Jal forgives their sins. And Allah Azza wa Jal forgives people because of this. And there are many, many examples of this.
Harun, the whole point of this dunya, this life now, is to plant such seeds in the dunya that when we leave, them seeds grow into large trees. I.e., we do such good deeds here, leave such knowledge behind, leave such benefit for Muslims behind, that when we leave such children behind, that when we leave and we're not here anymore, our good deeds are being, are growing. That's the whole reason of life. That's the reason why we're on this mission, to plant those seeds. I think it's Imam Ghazali who mentions this, that we are here to plant the seeds, and when we leave on the Day of Judgment, we're going to see the outcome of that, what we planted.
I wanted to move to the essence of this topic, because your parents have passed away. You have buried them. Now, physically, you can't help them anymore. You can't, massage their feet. You can't give them food. You can't eat them. You can't take them to the bathroom. You can't do all of that. Physically, it's all at an end. But spiritually, you can still provide esal iswab for them, because they're waiting for you to do that. Another hadith of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the state of a deceased person in his grave is like that of a drowning man. He waits anxiously for supplications from his father, his mother, his brother, or his friends. When anyone's supplication reaches him, he finds it better than the world and whatever is within it. Allah Azza wa Jal bestows the sawab gifted by alive relatives upon the deceased like mountains. You mentioned the mountain earlier. The gift of the alive to the dead is to say forgiveness for them. SubhanAllah.
And the fathers would say, my son's a doctor, engineer, so on and so forth. But in the qabr, that person who's left a hafiz behind, left a scholar behind, that father's going to be saying that, look, my son done dua for me, my son's reading Quran, my son's, doing Jummah khutbah somewhere. So he will be getting that reward.
So, our parents obviously have a haqq, have a right that after they've left this world, we pray namaz, we do dua for them regularly, we try and send as much esal iswab, because the concept in our community, Shiraz Bhai, is this, that once a year, Bandu ko dikhane ki, to show the world, I will arrange a big khatam, I'll fill my house with people, I'll order the food from a catering service, and everybody will think, and I'll call the local Imam Sahib, and they'll do a nice dua, and everybody says, Tune beta hone ka haqq ada kar diya. Is that right though? All year, I haven't said anything, I've gone about my business.
Specifically, when someone passes away, a lot of people just want to give money. And what I've realized is that's the easy way out. Honestly, it's easy to just give money. It's hard to give your time. And what I say to people, when the family members die, is go on a kafla. Leave your money, keep your money, go on a kafla. And take time off work. Go on a kafla and send the reward of that kafla to your parents. Join the ijtima every week. Send that reward to your parents. Giving money is easy, that's why everyone gives the money. No one gives that time, because you know when there's more mushaqqat, more difficulty in a certain act, it's more rewarding.
No, but I'm not asking for, sorry to interrupt you, we're not asking for anybody to do anything special. When your parents pass away, we're not saying every day sit down specifically for half an hour and recite, you know, some special aurat. What I'm saying is this: when you pray 5 times a day, do dua for your parents. Make a niyat that, Ya Allah, give my parents.
But we do in namaz.
We do automatically, but the one I'm trying to get to the one who doesn't think namaz is important. That even for your parents, this is the way. If you're normal life, if you're living a normal life, you pray 5 times a day. You're right, you're spot on. That you'll automatically pray for your parents. If you read the Quran in normal routine, make an intention for your parents. If you do any good deed, just say, Ya Allah, convey the reward of this to my parents. Now the beauty is, your reward will not decrease. Your reward will stay the same. The Hadith Mubarakah is your certificate for all that. It testifies to that. And then if you make dua for your parents, Allah Azza wa Jal, increases your sustenance. There's a Hadith Mubarakah I want to very quickly quote, because a lot of the time, our mentality, unfortunately, works from financial gain. When a person abandons making supplication for his parents, his sustenance is cut off. Now the reason in today's program I've specifically mentioned the books of Hadith Mubarakah, and I've even given references in relation to them, is because a lot of people, they get very confused about this, and it's not even confused, it's black and white. I'm going to finish off with a very beautiful Hadith Mubarakah in relation to supplications, because the learned scholars have taught us something really beautiful. Anybody, it's a Hadith Mubarakah, again, Majma' al-Zawaid, and Hadith Mubarakah 17598. Anybody who makes the supplication for forgiveness for all the Muslim men and women, Allah Azza wa Jalla writes a good deed for him in return for each and every Muslim man and woman. That is how amazing it is. So when you say, Ya Allah, bless the whole of the ummah, forgive the whole of the ummah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, all the Ashiqane Rasul who have passed by this world, all the devotees of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam who have left this world, not only do they get the reward, but you get the reward for each one of them as well. Now, so you're increasing your own book of deeds, and at the end of the dua, that's not a very difficult thing to ask for. Ask for your parents specifically, and your sustenance will
Even
increase.
the Prophet ﷺ, when he performed Qurbani, one of the shares was for the believers.
Allah.
So the Prophet ﷺ demonstrated this himself. Those that couldn't give Qurbani, the Prophet ﷺ gave that reward to them.
There are lots of Hadith Mubarakah. If anybody even has the slightest bit of doubt, if you go onto dawatislami.net, onto Dawat Islami's website, and you can download a beautiful book by Amir al-Sunnah called The Method of Fatiha. And I would also recommend, and I did recommend last week as well, the Madani Will, written by Amir al-Sunnah.
That's a must read.
Must read.
For everyone.
Honestly, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely eye-opener, and it teaches you all different things.
The first time I taught in class, the students were like, Ustadji, the person who wrote this, is he still alive?
Allah.
I mean, that's how fast it is, because the things Amir al-Sunnah says are just amazing.
It's amazing.
It opens your eyes.
And this booklet is 26 pages. I mean, I read this earlier today, and it must have taken me, 10 minutes. So tonight, when you go to sleep, you can download it onto your phone. Use this for something positive, yeah? Download it onto your phone. Download this. Download both books right now, and make the niyyah that before I go to sleep, 10-15 minutes, I'm going to read these booklets. Read one today, read one tomorrow. You will learn so much, inshallah. We're running out of time. I just wanted to kind of, in the end, mention that your parents, when they pass away from this world, they need you, and they need you to do dua for them. They need you to remember. It's not just once a year. It's not just that time for khatam comes and we show the world. No. Really pious children and good children are those who, from Fajr, Zohar, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, Tahajjud, Awwabin, all these, every time they pray, they make sure they protect their prayer, and they pray for their parents. And those parents in their grave will be living a life of luxury, and those parents will be proud of you. And because they are proud of you and they are happy with you, Allah Azza wa Jalla is happy with you. May Allah Azza wa Jalla give us the tawfiq, give us the ability to pray for our parents and do ihsal as-sawab. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Remember the hereafter, and you will remember why you are here and what you are after.
Now, in our Madani Recharge, I wanted to do something different today, because we were always talking about the love of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and indeed the world revolves around that. But there's no doubt that the best of creation sallallahu alaihi wasallam is everything to us, is the essence of our souls and our lives. And our world evolves around Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what Aka Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam instilled in our hearts was the love of Allah Azza wa Jal. And the scholars write that it is the love of Allah Azza wa Jal and it is the fear of Allah Azza wa Jal that really makes a person change. You know, the true person who loves Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't commit sin. The true person who loves Allah Azza wa Jal lives in the hope of meeting Allah Azza wa Jal, lives in the fear that I don't want to do any act of disobedience in the court of Allah Azza wa Jal. The one who loves Allah Azza wa Jal gives priority to the duties and rights of Allah Azza wa Jal over everything else. The one who loves Allah Azza wa Jal gets up in the middle of the night, leaves the soft bed. You know, a lot of us love that bed and it's nice and warm. But he leaves that soft bed because he loves the bed, but he loves Allah Azza wa Jal more. You know, the one who wants to sleep in the morning, loves his morning sleep, is very, very good for the nafs, because the nafs feels good. But for this love of Allah Azza wa Jal, he gets up. It's very cold outside, but for the love of Allah Azza wa Jal, he does wudu and he heads off to the masjid. Blessed are those people, and they truly love Allah Azza wa Jal. But even in this weather where it's -3 and it's snowing and everything else, and you get to the masjid and alhamdulillah the masjid is all open and the heaters are on because somebody's got there early morning. These are the people who love Allah Azza wa Jal. They spend their lives in the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. Their days and nights are dominated by the love of Allah Azza wa Jal. In the long winter nights they stand in prayer of Allah Azza wa Jal. In the long days they fast for the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. Their love for others is because of their love of Allah Azza wa Jal. Their enmity towards others is for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. You know, if they give somebody, they help for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And when Allah Azza wa Jal blesses them, they're constantly grateful because they have that great love and admiration for Allah Azza wa Jal. All they do is they just thank Allah Azza wa Jal. They look at their blessings and they don't say, my intellect and my skill has brought this. No, they say, this is the blessing from my Lord. And then every affair that happens, they don't look to the world. Their love for Allah Azza wa Jal is so great that they look towards Allah Azza wa Jal. These people, they are patient. When they're distressed, they don't turn and run about like people who are trying to catch on to anything that can help them. No, they turn to the prayer mat and they prostrate in the court of Allah Azza wa Jal. These are people whose hearts are devoted to the obedience of Allah and His Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And these are the people who are closest to Allah Azza wa Jal. These are the people that Allah Azza wa Jal holds as mahbub, the beloved in His court. And these are the people that you love the company of. These are the people, when you're around them, you don't want to go anywhere, you want to stay with them. When you look at their face, you just want to continue looking at them. You know, when you spend time with them, they remind you of Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is one of the traits and one of the qualities of a wali of Allah Azza wa Jal. You know, the scholars say that a wali of Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who reminds you of Allah Azza wa Jal, increases the love of Allah Azza wa Jal in your heart, increases the fear of Allah Azza wa Jal in your heart. So the world evolves around the love of Allah and His Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If we can instill in our hearts this love, then we will automatically get up for Fajr. We will protect Zohar. We will make sure we pray Isha. We will make sure that we read the Quran. We will make sure that we're nice to people. We will make sure that we act in accordance with the Sunnah. We will make sure that we live a life of obedience in the court of Allah Azza wa Jal. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us all one iota, one drop of true love of the Creator Supreme and true love of His beloved Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ameen bi jahin Nabil Ameen sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Remember the hereafter, and you will remember why you are here. Remember the hereafter, and you will remember why you are here and what you are after.